scoring, if you're okay with that, if members want to use that option. I've amended the scoring chart to include 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, and so on. Thank you.
Member Kama, I see your hand before we officially commence.
No, thanks, Chair. I believe now we were going to deal with the issue of the questions as to who's going to ask the question.
Yeah.
If that's the case, Chair, can I request that maybe perhaps for 10 minutes we request that we are not public so that we're able to deal with the issue of those questions. Then after that we can just zoom straight to it being broadcast live.
Okay, perfect. That works for me, Member Philander.
Apologies, Chair. I am comfortable with what Member Kama just suggested in terms of your previous comment or question in terms of who will be posing which questions. I would like to then recommend that I pose question 5 if that is in order, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Wasim. Are we live?
Yes, Chairperson. So if you are going to have it sort of in camera, you'll have to use the specific rule for that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Matthews. It is now 10:33. I am officially opening the meeting for the Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport. We are here today to interview members that of the public that have applied to form part of the governing board of the Western Cape Liquor Authority. I will request members to briefly introduce themselves for the record and also to state if they are standing in for any permanent member at this time. Before I provide clarity on the way forward, members, over to you.
Good morning, Chair. It's Member Mesuli Kama, member of this committee.
Good morning, Chair. Wendy Philander, standing in for Member Botha.
Good morning, Chairperson Kilian Postman, standing in for Kilian Postman.
Thank you, Member Postman, and each and every member that is here. As I've indicated, we are meeting today to interview a number of members that have applied for the governing board. My name is Regan Allen and I'm the chairperson of this particular committee, the Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport. With us we have our procedural officer, Mr. Wasim Matthews, our IT support as well as assistant procedural officer. Thank you so much to those that are tuning in on YouTube and on social media. We firmly believe that the work of the governing body of the Western Cape Liquor Authority is so vital. The work that they do. We've seen the effects of alcohol. We've seen the effects of illegal outlets in our communities. And this particular board exercises oversight over the work of the Liquor Authority. To state the proceedings briefly, I am going to, at this juncture, allow for Rule 72, where the committee can briefly discuss in camera regarding the way forward, and directly thereafter this meeting will be opened once again and we will be conducting 5 interviews. We have communicated with those that are being interviewed regarding their time slots, and they will be accordingly afforded an opportunity to log in and be interviewed by the committee here today for consideration to be recommended to the governing board. So those 5 members will be interviewed today, and we will then allow for Rule 72 in terms of our in-camera discussions leading up to interviewing those that have made themselves available. This is a Standing Committee on Community Safety, and I will ask the procedural officer at this time to then accordingly close the meeting for in-camera purposes.
Thank you, Chair. Might just allow IT.
Allow to welcome in Miss Dr. America.
Chairperson, I just want to allow IT a chance to go sort of live again. Well, we are live, I mean, in terms of switching on the camera. So I'll just take a cue from IT when they are ready. The candidate is in the meeting. So.
Good morning once again, members and those that are tuning in on YouTube. As I've indicated previously, before we used Rule 72 in order to have in-camera discussions, we are here today to interview five members of the public that have availed themselves to serve on the Western Cape Liquor Authority. Once again, Dr. America, thank you so much for you being here. I will at this time request if you are able to put on your camera.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is good seeing you again. Just to briefly highlight, we have a multi-party committee. It is Member Kama, Member Bosman, Member Philander, and myself. You have also engaged our procedural staff, Mr. Matthews, in terms of the way forward. This interview, we do thank ESCOM that they have kept on the lights, and that we trust that each and every member, together with those that are being interviewed, will ultimately have internet connectivity. This is an open platform. You have availed yourself to serve on the Western Cape Liquor Authority. So please feel welcome, feel relaxed. We will ask 4 questions, and during our in-camera discussions, we have resolved that each member, even though it is on MS Teams, will be asking their specific question as well. So you will get a sense of the entire committee engaging you. Should there be any additional follow-up question, a question for clarity, for example, on what you've said or linked to your CV, one of the members will then indicate by using the raise hand function and ask that specific question. You have 3 minutes to answer each question, but at this stage, I will afford members to once again just briefly state their names so you can hear their voices before they ask the first question. And then directly after they have stated their names, I will then ask you for 2 minutes introductory comments that you would want to make at this stage. I'm Regan Allen. I'm the chairperson of this Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport. Once again, baie dankie. Thank you so much that you have availed yourself and that you are here today. Members, over to you.
I'm Gillian Postman.
Good morning, Dr. America. I'm Wendy Philander.
Hi, Wendy.
Good morning, Dr. America. I'm Mesuli Kama.
Morning.
Thank you. We are 4 people. We are not intimidating at all. So over to you. Any introductory remarks from your side? You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, members of this committee. I am Karina America. I am an academic at Stellenbosch University, very much interested in education and also interested in the well-being of young people. And I see this as an opportunity for me, should I be, given the opportunity to get involved in, engaging and creating awareness about, in the best interest of students specifically that I'm working with on a day-to-day basis. But I'm also working in terms of other structures at the university, in terms of education and curriculum and how to best add value to the student population in this country. Thank you.
Dr. America, thank you so much. I will kickstart the process in terms of asking the first question. You have served on the WCLA. Why are you applying again? Are you able to broaden your specific introductory remarks, but also but answer the specific question? Why are you applying for this position again?
Thank you for that question. I apply because I see this as a valuable opportunity for me to make a contribution, and also the fantastic work that the authority is doing. And although my interaction with the authority was very brief, which I'm also thankful for, I learned a lot in terms of what they're doing, given me a broader perspective as to its mandate, how it can best serve the community, and after all, the work that they do, absolutely tremendous in terms of the best interest for society as a whole. So I see myself, adding value to that, and that is why I applied again. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Member Bosman.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you very much for that answer, Dr. America. Since you did indicate that you spent a brief time with the authority, I'd like to find out what would you consider some of the major challenges within the Western Cape Liquor Authority, and if possible, if you have any solutions to that.
Yes, thank you for that. The major challenge I would see is the harms reduction in alcohol abuse in terms of its implementation. I know there's a white paper, about alcohol harms reduction, and it is a key performance indicator for the authority. But I see that for me as one of the key indicators that stand out, and I would see that going forward, because alcohol in this country is a complicated matter. We saw during the hard lockdown of COVID restrictions, the issues related to how South Africans reacted during that time, and how we can further create awareness in terms of, broadening the scope to sensitize people about the responsible use. I'm not against alcohol consumption. I am for responsible consumption. And that is why I think, that particular issue stand out for me. And also coupled to that, the additional inspectors dedicated to reducing the harm, the policing and closing down of illegal shebeens, as well as licensed liquor outlets, which do not abide by the licensing conditions. So all of that, is around this notion of what can we do better, and how can we increase the awareness to reduce alcohol in this country, to reduce the alcohol harm, and everything that is inflicted by the irresponsible consumption of alcohol. Thank you.
Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Dr. America, for the responses provided so far. My question would then be, what would you consider to be the main responsibilities of a well-functioning Western Cape Liquor Authority Board?
For me, the most important mandate, other than ensuring compliance with regard to license, approvals, and the compliance intervention to embark on alcohol harms reduction, would still be the creation of a wider awareness and sensitizing the community around it. Now that can take many forms. You know, I mentioned liquor licensing administration, you know, communication, education, and what do we do in terms of stakeholders to create awareness about the negative social consequences, and this kind of awareness can include interactions like communication to the current liquor license holders, their responsibility towards society, communications towards, you know, at schools, and especially higher education, because that is what I'm missing in this whole debate about how alcohol, you know, the harm that it inflicts on young people. So I see higher education also as a key arena that has to be entered, because there are many young people, you know, consuming alcohol at universities, on campuses, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes in an irresponsible way. So I see the, you know, the working together with neighborhood watches, the community policing forums, and how we can, you know, create awareness in municipalities and other government institutions. So yes, I see compliance and enforcement as important, but I also see the creation of awareness and specifically education as key. Thank you.
Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you, Dr. America. You certainly touched on the answer to my question during the latter two responses. The Western Cape Liquor Act aims at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. If you can perhaps tell the committee, what would you recommend as smart interventions? Would you or what would you recommend as smart interventions that you would want to see in the Act? What would your, say, three you know, core interventions be? Thank you.
We already have, thank you for that question, a very good question. We already have the age restriction with, you know, with the alcohol, selling of alcohol. That should be enforced. So how we, because, you know, if we do not have the resources to enforce it, it also becomes a gray area. So age restriction with, you know, with regard to alcohol consumption, the enforcement of the outlets, the liquor license holders, and keeping them accountable to their responsibility. So I would see that as crucial, and also enforcing it from a structural perspective. How do we enforce that liquor holders, you know their responsibility towards alcohol, and maybe in terms of a pricing structure that you know, liquor becomes, although you know we've seen it during COVID, the long queues, you know, when the restrictions were lifted. And something along those lines that would restrict alcohol, but not in terms of, you know, putting a damper on the industry itself, because we need the industry for economic growth. So the industry becomes important. But what I also experience in the environment that I'm at, you know, we have so many students with in various societies, and they have functions, and most of the functions goes along with the socialization in terms of liquor being provided. And sometimes those liquor, the liquor is being sponsored by the industries in the area, you know, and looking at ways of maybe, you know, in terms of how that is being subsidized and maybe channeled in a way that the university benefit from you know, the liquor that's being subsidized, but that there's a cost involved, and that cost is maybe channeled to a bursary education trust or something like that. So I see that as some ways of you know, not restricting it totally, but taking on a further responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Members, is there any additional question, follow-up question specific to answers that were provided by Dr. America? If I see no hands, Member Bosman, you may go ahead.
If I can perhaps ask Dr. America to expand more on what role she sees the Western Cape Liquor Authority playing in dealing with alcohol harms reduction as a challenge, and what more the Western Cape Liquor Authority can do to ensure that that doesn't become a major challenge. So on top of what is already being done, what would her recommendations be for sort of doing more to deal with that challenge?
Thank you for that question. I would certainly think that more awareness, you know, more resources be pumped into creating more awareness about the harm of irresponsible use of alcohol, and that awareness can be channeled through different, even parastatals. It can be challenged. It can be challenged through different government institutions or other stakeholders, but more specifically, it should be challenged via the education system. And because I'm so passionate about education, I think that that is an ideal arena for us to create that kind of awareness. And the WCLA should then create more resources in terms of you know, channeling resources towards creating that kind of awareness, because irresponsible use of alcohol is debilitating in our society. There's always a ripple effect. We've seen it during lockdown, and we've seen it, you know, when the restrictions were lifted, and it's coupled with vehicle accidents, it's coupled with criminal behavior, it's coupled with antisocial behavior in general, and extreme high levels of abuse. Other than creating a penalty in terms of a tax associated to the consumption, the selling of alcohol, I also see increased awareness as key over a wide spectrum. Thank you.
Dr. America, baie dankie. Thank you so much. Is there any 30 seconds that you still want to say to the committee? You have stuck to your time, as I've noted my side. So thank you once again for availing yourself and for being here with the committee. Is there anything that you want to say? 30 seconds.
Yes, 30 seconds. I'm not against the consumption of alcohol, not in the least. After all, the industry is important and contributes to the economic growth and job creation. But I think responsible consumption of alcohol for me is key, and we need to create that kind of awareness in our society. Thank you.
Thank you so much for availing yourself. May you have an amazing rest of the day and the weekend. And as a committee, we will interview a number of people today. We will then make recommendations to the minister, and the provincial minister will then ultimately appoint members to serve on the Western Cape Liquor Authority.
Thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity.
No problem. You keep well. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Members, thank you so much. We will, in the next 2 minutes, welcome our next participant. and that is Mr. Gideon Morris. I trust that the flow will continue to the flow, that we will keep the flow, and I think that has worked well in terms of the first interviewee. Thank you so much, Mr. Matthews. Are we able to allow?
Yes, Chairperson, we're just contacting the. There we go. He's in now.
Also, members are making the notes their side regarding the interviews. Mr. Morris, I trust that you are connected. I will at this time request that you put on your video.
Are you able to see me, Mr. Chair?
We can see you clearly, sir. I love the sign at the back, even though this is the Western Cape Liquor Authority interviews. I am having a cup of coffee my side, and there's a coffee sign where you are sitting.
Yes, I'm at home, Chairperson. That's my wife's doing. So
no problem. Thank you. I trust that you will feel welcome, Mr. Morris. In terms of the way forward, we have a multi-party committee and we are interviewing 5 interviewees today. I will allow you to make 2 minutes, take 2 minutes to make any introductory remarks. We will ask a set of 4 questions. You are allowed to answer each question 3 minutes per question. And if there is any follow-up question or a question seeking clarity based on what you have said or derives from your CV, one of the members will potentially ask that question as well. You would understand the process directly afterwards. The committee will deliberate and we will submit a list of names to the provincial minister, who will then make a determination. Are you covered? Are you settled?
Yes, thank you, Chairperson. That's very clear. Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much. I will ask the first question after you have made introductory remarks, and then each member will be asking a question and they will be putting on their camera as well, so that you can see it's a multi-party committee. Everyone's asking questions and we are all working towards ensuring that the board function and do optimally what they are able to, and that they do what they are supposed to do in terms of the act. So introductory remarks from you, sir.
Well, Chairperson, thank you for the opportunity again also to be interviewed. Thank you for considering my nomination. I think as introduction, I would just like to again refer the members of the committee to the fact that I have extensive knowledge and interaction with the Liquor Authority. As the then head of department, I was the lead on the alcohol game changer, the harms reduction. I have extensive knowledge and experience in administration and financial management. And again, Chairperson, as I said, thank you for the opportunity to be nominated, and I hope you find a suitable candidate.
Thank you so much. And I love the beard, your side. So first question, members, I trust that you are ready. ESCOM is helping us this morning in order to ensure that we all remain connected. Members are making their notes their side. So Mr. Morris, the first question, you've made introductory remarks. I understood those introductory remarks, but can I get an understanding on why you are applying? Why are you availing yourself for this, to serve on this particular board?
Yeah, Chairperson, I was nominated by a very good friend of mine to be part of the board. And it is something that I truly believe that I can add value to. As I've mentioned, I have a lot of experience in the field, and I honestly believe that the regulating of the liquor trade and the industry is probably one of the largest contributors to the lack of safety and to especially crimes like domestic violence and so forth. So from my side now, having retired from active service after 36 years, I do believe that I have the time and I definitely still have the energy to be able to make a contribution to this. And as I said, having been nominated, I thought I'll take up the challenge and I'll give you, let's say, we'll then see whether I'm successful in the application or not.
Thank you so much, Member Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and it's very nice to see Advocate Morris again. As your voice came on, I immediately was taken back to, I think it was our first meeting as a committee. As you stated, you've got quite a lot of experience in your interaction with the Western Cape Liquor Authority. So my question would be, what would you consider to be some of the major challenges facing the Western Cape Liquor Authority?
Thank you, Honourable Member Bosman. It's also equally kind to see all the faces from my side as well. I think firstly, let me just elaborate a bit on my qualifications and my experience. As you may have seen in the nomination, I have a master's degree in business administration, or MBA is commonly referred to. I have, as I said, 36 years of experience in government, of which 22 years were at senior management level and 5 or 6 years as head of department. I think the issues that we dealt with during the alcohol harms reduction project, in particular, we looked at the efficiencies, the process efficiencies of the Liquor Authority, and there's significant room for possible improvement, especially in the way that they consider licenses, the way that they administer, the way that they collect their funding, to mention only a few. I think some of the immediate priorities, of course, would still be the way, you understand, there are probably, I think the latest stats that I saw, there were 26 illegal outlets for every 1 legal outlet. So the first question is, how do we get people to be part of the, let's call it the grouping of legal outlets, so that we can then also assist and have some scope and influence in the way that they do their business. So I think one would have to look at the barriers that exist to organizations to be able to access a liquor license. And again, Chairperson, there, not wanting to go into too much detail, I'm mindful of your time limitations, but if you look at, for instance, the fees collected on a liquor license. So during the research, we saw that the vast majority of people, when they apply for a license, they make use of a so-called consultant. The consultant will charge about 60,000 to 70,000 Rand for a license. Of that money, only about 5,000 will come to the authority. The rest will go to the consultant because of the red tape that we've created in the complexity to apply for a license. It is almost impossible for an ordinary member to be able to work through all that administration. So I believe, and again, if we look at the success there, for instance, of our revenue collection, the way that they were able to go alternative ways and much more user-friendly, I believe that if we can improve on our process efficiency, we can cut out the middleman and we can save the license holders a lot of money. We can welcome young entrepreneurs into the industry, and at the same time, we can then also make sure that the lion's share of the money paid comes to government, so that we have more resources to do the important work on the side of the harms reduction. Thank you, Mr. Bosman.
Thank you so much for sticking to the 3 minutes. I now have Member Kama.
Good day, Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks, Advocate, for the responses that you have provided so far. And likewise, I think it's good to see you with the beard. Now, my question would be, what would you consider to be the main responsibilities of a well-functioning board of the Western Cape Liquor Authority?
Thank you, Mr. Kama. Again, it is a legislative entity, meaning it was created by law. the powers, functions and duties of the Liquor Board is spelled out very carefully in Section 9 of the Act. I'm not going to go through all the detail, but I think as a strategic, or let's say the question that you asked, Chairperson, I think again, the Western Cape's economy is mainly driven by, or let's say is largely driven by agriculture and the wine industry or the alcohol industry. And I believe therefore the Liquor Authority should be really a world-class leading industry. We shouldn't be, and please, I don't hope to offend anybody, but we shouldn't be chasing the shebeen owners. What we should be doing is we should be opening world markets to the trade. We should be encouraging more, as I said, entrepreneurship into the industry. Let me just try and answer here again. So, sorry, I'll stick to the 3 minutes. But again, when you look at the fact that there are so many people that are avoid the opportunity to trade legally, you will know that then attracts a different kind of businessman. It doesn't bring a young entrepreneur that's willing to invest capital. What it then brings, brings in a businessman that works on the basis of high risk, high reward. They come in, they don't create a safe space. They don't create because they know the police can raid them at any time. So if we can create a legal entity where young entrepreneurs will put down their money, they'll invest in infrastructure, they'll invest in security again. So coming back to your question, I think the liquor industry needs to strategically change their direction to say, let's look worldwide, and also let's look at how do we encourage good behavior and good trade and responsible trade in an industry that is so important to the whole of the country as well as the Western Cape. Thank you, sir.
Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good day, Mr. Morris. My name is Wendy Philander, and my question to you is as follows. The Western Cape Liquor Act aims at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. Mr. Morris, what would you recommend as a smart intervention or smart interventions that you would want to see reflected in the Act? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Philander, and it's nice to see you as well, ma'am. I think, of course, there are the technical changes that's already in the Amendment Act. Some of them came from the game changer, the harms reduction project. I don't know if you want me to go into those details, but I think at a strategic level, I think what the Act needs to, again, as I said, we need to look at the barriers that we've created for people to be able to trade responsibility. And again, the example that I use, ma'am, in some of the so-called for informal settlements, or let's rather say of the areas like Kailicha and many others, you'll find that there's an absolute barrier called zoning. So people can't apply for a legal license because of the zoning regime that exists. Now, that there's no requirement in national law for zoning, yet we've created that in the Western Cape through the Western Cape Liquor Act, as an example. So I think we really need to look at, you understand, what are the barriers to, and again, I want to emphasize, what are the barriers to safe trade of liquor, and how do we then look at removing those barriers and replacing it with alternatives. I know, for instance, and there's a requirement of that we need to look at the age of youngs, how people, when they come to buy alcohol, they need to show their ID. I respectfully don't believe that is. You understand, we're just creating more and more red tape. You understand, I think, again, if I go to a restaurant and I want to buy a beer and they ask me my ID, I'm going to be irritated unnecessarily, you understand? And it's not the work of Parliament or the legislature to create this kind of barriers. One needs to look at how do we remove the barriers, how do we make it more efficient and effective. So again, from the legal perspective, as I said before, I think one will have to, and a lot of work's already been done to identify the key barriers that exist in the industry, and then we need to consult with our public representatives, being yourself, on which of those barriers should we remove and which should we enhance, or as I said, you understand, maybe take out altogether if that is possible. I hope I've answered your question, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris.
Mr. Morris, I will now afford any member of the committee that has any burning follow-up. Members, do I see any member having a follow-up? I see no hands. Mr. Morris, thank you for sticking to the time and for using your time allocation. That brings us to the end of our interview. However, I will ask if you have any concluding remarks from your side. But as you would know, the committee will interview a number of people today still, thereafter deliberate, and then submit our recommendations to the Office of the Speaker and the Minister, and then communication will be sent to those people that were interviewed like yourself. So thank you so much. I still see no hands. Mr. Morris, any concluding remarks from your side?
Chairperson, no, again from my side, thank you kindly. Also for the manner in which the interview were conducted. I think it was very, very professional and very fair. I wish you well in your deliberation process. Maybe as closing remarks, again, I would just like to remind the members that I have the time now to get dedicated to this job. I believe that it is of critical importance to the efficiency of the whole of the Western Cape as it's linked to crime, and especially, as I said, the issues of domestic violence and so. And I believe with my experience and my commitment, my track record as a HOD is known to all of you. I hope to be able to serve the communities also in this way. So thanks for the opportunity, and I wish you well in your deliberations, and thank you kindly. And understand, I wish that you also have the opportunity to retire soon, Chair.
Hopefully one day. But thank you so much. May you have an amazing Friday and weekend further. As a committee, we appreciate each and every interviewee that has made themselves available and that has taken the time in order to engage us. So thank you so much. May you have a good day further.
Thank you, Chair. Bye-bye.
See you. Bye. Members, thank you so much. I see Mr. Matthews.
Chair, we are ready to admit the next person if you are ready.
Members, in the next minute, Wasim. Members, I trust that we are continuing to making our notes outside, but I appreciate that the flow is working for us today. So thank you so much. Mr. Koos Lou can be allowed entry. Good morning. Mr. Lou, are you able to hear my voice? Good morning, Mr. Lou.
Wave at Mr. Lou, Chair.
Mr. Lou, are you able to hear my voice? Good morning. It is now 11:25, Mr. Lou. Are you able to hear my voice? Colleagues, are you able to hear my voice?
Yes, we are, Chair.
100%.
Mr. Low, can I get an indication that you are able to hear my voice?
I can hear your voice. It is there. It's not very clear, but I can hear your voice. Is that Honourable Member Allen?
Yes, that is correct. I will speak a bit louder and I trust that you will be able to hear my voice and see my face. Mr. Low, we are delighted that you have put yourself up and made yourself available to be interviewed by a multi-party committee. I will allow each and every member of the committee to ask a question. They will also put on their camera so that you have a sense of the entire committee. But to give you the process moving forward, I will ask you for introductory remarks, and a time limit is 2 minutes. 2 minutes for introductory remarks. Then each member will ask you a question, and you have 3 minutes per question. Thereafter, if there is any follow-up question, then one of the members will raise their hand and they will ask a follow-up question. Are you clear? Are you ready to go?
I'm quite clear. Thank you, Chair. I'm quite clear. Shall I start?
Yes. Mr. Low, any introductory comments from you at this stage?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present myself to the Standing Committee. Very briefly, just in terms of my own history, I studied as a civil engineer, but in my career, I also obtained a degree in law, an LLB, as well as a master's in business leadership. I retired in April 21 from as an investment banker. I worked for quite a number of years for Rand Merchant Bank, and the focus from that perspective was the analysis of large listed corporate companies, the credit profiles, which obviously also entailed an analysis of the qualitative side, such as the corporate governance, which principles that apply there. Now, when I applied for the previous board, my key motivation for my application was my ability to actually contribute business expertise as well as then sound knowledge of corporate governance. And during my term at the previous board, that is what I then actually brought to the table. I actually served on that board from 2018 to 21 as a governing board member, but also then chair of the risk committee and also a member of the finance, HR, the IT and the ethics committee. Now the question is, why did I reapply? In terms of the previous board, you know, the board had received quite a number of challenges, such as, you know, fruitless and wasteful expenditure that had to be sorted out, which the board did, and proper and sound governance protocols were installed throughout the 3-year term. Now, having achieved an unqualified an audit, I think that is one of the key success stories of the previous board. Now, the focus on projects such as the differentiating pricing model, legislative amendments that would require to enable that, organizational design, all these projects were sort of started and were sort of gaining momentum. And sadly, the fact that I didn't make a real appointment to maintain that momentum and carry through the initiatives was a big disappointment to me. In fact, you know, it's common knowledge that Ronnie Kimball, the current chair, is the only previous board member that, in fact, were reappointed. Now, in conclusion, I still believe that I can make a meaningful contribution to the board. I have the time and I have the capacity. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Low, thank you so much. You have answered my first question on why you have applied, but I will afford you another minute to 2 minutes if you do want to touch on any further information on why I have noted the remarks that you have made, but that would have been my first introductory question. So do you want to use your extra 2 minutes to elaborate and motivate to the committee on why?
Sorry, Chair, you know, the line was actually very bad. I missed the very first part of it, but you said that I have some time available. Now, on what areas should I actually elaborate? If you could just be clear.
No problem. I am going to switch off my video so that the connection is a bit more stable. My first question, Mr. Lowe, would have been, why have you applied? And I know, and the committee has also noted that you have made remarks on that. But if there is any further comment that you would want to make, I will afford you a maximum of 2 additional minutes on why you have applied, if you wish to motivate.
Yeah. I think just in terms of the generality of being a governing board member, it is a difficult task time-wise, and I think one should be very aware that you know, your availability to actually to contribute at board level would entail quite a number of hours. You know, on average, the board packs range from 400 to 400 pages at a time, you know, containing very complex legal documentation and so forth. So your time availability is of the essence. On the projects that we initiated, the differentiated pricing model, I think, is probably the most exciting one, but that would need legislative changes. And obviously that process has now started. I have lost contact in terms of the progress, but once that is in place, then one could actually, you know, bring the revenue generation focus across the industry. The benefit for the smaller taverners would be that one could actually then look at discounts if they achieve certain milestones, but then your larger license holders like the Pick and Pays and the Alta Liquors, they can make a bigger contribution. So that to me is, when it comes to the financial sustainability of the authority, that is a key issue that needs to be achieved as sooner than later. That obviously would also then release the burden on the fiscus to continuously fund the organization. The other issue that I think that's also important is the organizational design. You know, the authority was started last year without a proper organizational diagram. Now, and as a board member during my term, one actually got the sense that a lot of the professionals at the authority, in fact, are doing work that they are not being compensated for. So there's a lot of, let's call it intellectual capacity, but the organizational design, I think, will then give justice to that organizational capacity.
Mr. Lowe,
yeah, I think I've taken up my 2 minutes.
And you've covered my question. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mr. Lowe. I will now note Member Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon, Mr. Lowe. My question to you would be...
Honourable Bosman, good morning.
Good morning, sorry, yes. I'm jumping the gun here. I want it to be afternoon. My question would be, what would you consider to be the major challenges currently facing the Western Cape Liquor Authority? Were you able to hear me, sir? Chairperson, are you able to hear me?
Member Bosman, may I ask that you re-ask the question as your video remains off at this time? I think there is a network.
Okay. Mr. Lowe, my question was, what would you consider to be the biggest challenges facing the Western Cape Liquor Authority?
Honourable Bosman, thank you for that question. I think I've have already touched on some of them, but I think let me just reiterate on some of them. I think the big problem that was quite visible was the organization authority was not appropriately capacitated to deliver its core mandate, and that has now started with the new organizational design project. Then, secondly, there's legislative changes and that is a slow process. Unfortunately, I believe that some of these changes have in fact been highlighted as being of urgency, and there may be some mechanism whereby they could be implemented sooner than later. Now, these changes are critical for the differentiating pricing model. And as I've explained, the benefit for the smaller liquor license holder versus could then be generated, as well as then preserving the financial sustainability of the organization. Yeah, obviously COVID has been a problem, and it's still a problem that needs to be managed. And the key challenge, obviously, with all the protocols is to keep your staff safe. And I believe that has been achieved at the height of the previous pandemic sort of heights. And I can only suggest that those protocols be maintained meticulously to preserve the well-being of the staff. Mr. Bosman, I think that sums up to me the key challenges.
Thank you very much.
Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll switch off my video in this instance, if you don't mind, for network. But the question that I have, Mr. Lowe, and thank you for the responses you have provided so far. The question that
I've actually lost total contact.
Hello, can you hear me now? Chairperson, Mr. Lowe?
I can hear you clearly my side. Mr. Lowe, are you able to hear Member Kama? Member Kama, you can try again.
Good morning, Mr. Lowe. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I've actually lost total connection. I can see my screen is still active, but I don't hear anything.
Members, I will request at this time for Mr. Lowe to switch off his camera. Would that be in order with everyone? So that we are able to ensure that we hear. Mr. Lowe, are you able to switch off your camera, please? Oh, he's leaving.
Maybe we should allow him to re-enter, Chair.
Yeah, if we can allow him to, if IT is able to call him back in again. We have 2 additional questions for Mr. Lowe.
Chairperson, I'll give him a call.
Thank you so much. Members, Mr. Lowe is currently connecting.
Wait a few seconds on your side.
Thank you.
Mr. Lowe, I will request that you leave your video off at this time so that we are able to hear your voice and answers as clear as possible. We have 2 additional questions, and I will now hand over to Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Low. I hope you can hear me now.
Mr. Karma, thank you very much. I can hear you very clearly.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. And thanks for the responses you have provided so far. And my question would be, what would you consider to be the main responsibilities of a well-functioning Western Cape Liquor Authority board?
Mr. Karma, I think let's, obviously the Liquor Act, in fact, must give guidance to what the board's responsibilities are. Now, in terms of the Act, the board has got certain powers and certain functions which is imposed on it. Now, if you have a power and if you have a function, then you must manage. Well, you may exercise the power, and in terms of the Act, you certainly have to perform those duties that the Act, in fact, imposes on you. Now, having said all that, this all then centers around the managing of the business of the authority. And the authority has got quite a number of components, and I can just briefly mention some of them, the administration component, which basically handles the application, the receipts, and so forth. Then you have your compliance and enforcement, which is critical in terms of, implementing the essence of the Act in the industry. Then obviously financial management is another component that needs to be handled and managed, such as, your HR and so forth. So what I'm saying is that apart from appointing, to manage the authority, then there are certain committees that are commissioned, which basically links in with these components and sort of manage and have an oversight of what is happening there. So in essence, what is the governing board's responsibility? It's, policy. It has to control. It has to provide strategic guidance, leadership in general, proper accountability and transparency in terms of all the aspects of the conduct of the authority, because ultimately the governing board needs to, report to SCOPA in terms of what has been happening. And the ultimate game, again, would then be to achieve an unqualified audit. Thank you, Mr. Karma.
Chairperson, can I proceed?
Honourable Philander, I hear you clearly.
You may go ahead, Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good day to you, Mr. Low. My name is Wendy Philander. And my question to you is, the Western Cape Liquor Act aim at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. What would you recommend, Mr. Low, as smart interventions that you would want to see reflected within the Act? Thank you very much, sir.
Right. Thank you, Mrs. Philander, for asking that question. I think the pandemic has certainly proven to us that the irresponsible consumption of alcohol places, apart from the gender-based violence, it also places a substantial strain on our trauma units. So the smart intervention, I would say, would be to allow people to enjoy alcohol responsibly, but to prevent these harmful effects, being implemented on our infrastructure in general. I would say a smart intervention would be to manage your sales times. In other words, what the COVID has given us sort of a very good indication is, if you have a curfew, that that to that extent is a smart intervention. To allow liquor sales not to take place on certain days and up to certain times, those are smart interventions. And I think that the liquor authority, in conjunction with your local authorities, because they also have some say in deciding what the kind of liquor sales opportunities would be. So there has to be a good communication and sort of cooperation between those two. Yeah, I think basically the your sales is probably one of the smartest and intervention that could be implemented straight away. And luckily we have, in terms of the COVID pandemic, we've got a result of how effective that could be. Thank you, Mrs. Rolander.
Thank you, Mr. Lowe.
Thank you so much, members. Is there any additional follow-up question that any member would have at this time? Clarity seeking, if you are able to raise your hand. Mr. Lowe, we are delighted that you have put your name up in order to be interviewed by the committee. I am just waiting to see if any hand is raised on the MS Teams platform, but I will afford you any closing remarks for a minute. I see no hands. Mr. Lowe, thank you so much. The process moving forward is that the committee will interview a number of applicants today. Thereafter, the committee will deliberate and then recommend to the minister a number names to the minister for appointment. So, Mr. Lowe, weer eens baie dankie. Thank you so much. Any closing remarks from your side?
Chairman, thank you very much for the opportunity to once again address the standing committee. I just can actually reiterate that I have the capacity and the time, and I think from a regaining or sort of maintaining the momentum of some of these projects, I think it's essential that the board, in fact, also then board members that have been involved in those projects, that they be reinstated. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Lowe, thank you so much. May you have an amazing Friday and weekend moving forward. We appreciate that you have taken the time to engage the committee and to be interviewed by the committee today. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you once again, members. Cheerio. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you so much, members. We are proceeding. We still have two additional interviewees, and we will now allow Advocate Khoza. Mr. Matthews?
Yes, I'll allow the advocate in now, Chairperson.
Good. It's still morning. Advocate Khoza, it's still morning for the next 11 minutes. Thank you so much that you have joined the standing committee to be interviewed by the committee. It is a multi-party committee, and various members of this particular committee will then ask you a particular question. You are allowed 3 minutes per question, but I will afford you 2 minutes at the beginning for any introductory remarks that you potentially want to share at this time with the committee. So feel welcome. We are harmless. We are not threatening in any way. It is still morning, so we are delighted that you are here, sir. Thank you so much. Advocate, any introductory remarks from you?
I just wish to say thank you for inviting me to this interview and for in consideration to be on the board. It's an honor, it's a privilege to have been nominated and have been interviewed today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I will kickstart. Why are you applying? Do you have the time? Why? What is your interest in applying?
Well, I believe I was nominated and I accepted the nomination simply because, firstly, I have worked in the past in the area of policy, and I've also worked on specifically the policy that has now become a white paper. Initially, when it started, the conceptual development of it, I was still part of it. So to see it coming together and at this stage is something that I've been interested in. But also I have a vast experience in governance, in sitting on boards, and that I think I could contribute to the board and what the authority actually does, its work in general. I think that the amount of experience I have, legal experience, policy development experience, policy analysis, as well as my background in human rights would be of value to the board and to the authority. So I'm very much interested in contributing to the provincial discussions and issues around the issues that the authority deals with.
Advocate, thank you so much. I will now note Member Bosman.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon to you, or good morning to you, sir. My question is, what would you consider to be some of the biggest challenges facing the Western Cape Liquor Authority at this time?
Member Bosman, I think I can think of three high-level ones, and the first is maybe two. Let me say two. The first is the tension between promoting economic development, which is what I think the industry works towards, on the one hand, which is the interest of the business of the industry itself, and then on the other is the interest in protecting the communities from the harm that is caused by alcohol or related to alcohol. That's the first issue, is the tension between those two. How do you strike the balance between promoting the industry, promoting economic growth on the one hand, and protecting communities from harm? The second thing that really is big in the province, I think, and is big in the country, is around enforcement. The enforcement of the act and the regulations that govern the industry and how the industry runs, and that is threefold. The first is the operation of unlicensed or traders, and the second is the illicit liquor trade that we've seen more during COVID, and the third is non-compliance with the Act and the regulations itself and the conditions that are imposed on licenses that have been given to certain license holders. Those three elements are very critical around enforcement, and I think the institutional capacity to actually enforce the laws and ensure that those who don't have licenses don't operate, or do get licenses in order to operate lawfully. It's one of the two major, big, broad challenges that the Western Cape faces, in my view.
Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, Advocate Khoza, and thanks for the responses we have given so far. My question would be, what would you consider to be the main responsibilities of a well-functioning board of the Western Cape Liquor Authority?
Well, I think the board has got an oversight function, obviously, over at least three aspects of the authority. One being the administration, the second being the tribunal itself, which grants applications and manages applications, and the third being the appeals tribunal, which deals with appeals and reviews. And that oversight role is crucial for the authority because it really provides strategic guidance on how these three aspects of the authority or components of the authority could be run efficiently. So issues of accountability is probably big on the agenda of the board. How do you hold a certain on these three levels? How do you hold people accountable for what they're supposed to do? And also, the other issue is making sure that the issues not only on enforcement and licensing itself, but also on issues that emanate from the harm that is caused by the policy issues that needs to be investigated or studied by the board or by the authority, that there's strategic guidance on those particular issues and that there's focus being placed in ensuring that there's that balance that I was talking about earlier, the balance between protecting economic growth and protecting communities. That for me is the major function of the board in order to provide strategic direction to the authority itself and how it's run.
Thank you, Member Kama. The last one, advocate, is Member Philander.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon, or rather, it's still good morning, Advocate Khoza. My question to you today, the Western Cape Liquor Act aims at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. Advocate Khoza, what would you recommend as smart interventions that you would want to see reflected within the Act? Thank you very much.
So one of the things that are the biggest concern about the Act is that it focuses so much on licensing and enforcement of conditions, enforcement of the law, enforcement of the regulations, but it pays lip service to the issue of alcohol-related harm reduction, and it doesn't really do much, even though it touches on it. And if you look at, for example, Section 9(3)(m) of the Act, you would see that it says that one of the functions of the board is to study and investigate, conduct studies and investigations around issues of harm, socio-economic consequences and cost of the industry. But when one looks into that and looks carefully at what the Act does throughout its text, one can see that there isn't really much that is done, that is provided in the Act to pursue that, other than to say that conduct studies and investigations. So therefore, I think that element of beefing up, if you like, law reform that would actually ensure that there's a balance between, the aspect of licensing and regulating the industry on the one hand, and on the other hand, making sure that the aspect of reducing alcohol-related harm is also just as important and prioritized in the Act. And I don't know how, at this point for now, I mean, it's all about law reform, but as to how that is done later on is something that we would have to engage on. But I think there's a need for striking that good balance in the Act, so that the Act reflects really what the issues are, rather than just the economic growth, which often isn't really. If one looks at the economic cost, the cost analysis of that, you'd see that often, what we see as economic contribution is actually seen as also an economic cost, because it surpasses that economic cost.
Advocate, I will check my drop-down list if there's any member that has any additional question at this time. Any follow-up questions from you members? I see no hands. In terms of the process moving forward, the committee is interviewing a number of nominees. Thereafter, we will deliberate, and then we will submit our recommended list to the Provincial Minister for his consideration and approval. We are delighted that you have taken the time to engage with us today. Is there any concluding remarks from your side?
Yeah. Well, I think there's only one thing I think I would like to add, and that is that the question that was raised earlier, and I think I wanted to add one more thing, and that is the challenges faced by the Western Cape Liquor Authority, and one of which is around this time, and given COVID that started last year, we've seen quite a lot of illicit trade, as well as unlawful sale of liquor outside of the restrictions of COVID. And I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we've faced in the last year. And obviously, on the other hand, on the one hand, the enforcement then became much more important. But at the same time, then you have people who have got pressures, economic pressures, and therefore trying to make means during the times that are so difficult for everyone. And I think the small traders would have suffered more than perhaps the others. And I think that probably has posed the biggest challenges, but also it posed opportunities for us to reflect more realistically about what are these costs of alcohol, because we've seen what the benefits have been of shutdown, of limited access to alcohol in fatalities, in violence reductions, and all of those things. But really, one needs to look at the data and analysis of what really that has been. And I think studies around that, investigations around that, in order for us to understand really what has been the benefits of this, and to contribute to the analysis of what are the cost and the harm caused by alcohol.
Advocate Koza, we are once again expressing our gratitude that you have taken the time to be interviewed, that you have accepted the nomination. Please have an amazing rest of your Friday and weekend. The committee will continue its work in terms of the process. But once again, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and thanks to all the members.
You keep well. Mr. Matthews, I saw the pop-up that, just help me quick, is it Wayne?
It's Wainwright.
Wainwright.
I'll allow it in now, sir.
Thank you. Miss Wainwright, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing well. Are you okay?
Yeah, all right.
I'm glad you have sadly missed the morning session by 3 minutes.
Yeah.
We have interviewed a number of nominees that were nominated, like yourself, to serve on the liquor board, on the governing board here in the Western Cape. So let me just make brief introductory remarks. And if I see that there's any connectivity issues, I will switch off my camera.
Okay.
My name is Regan Allen. I'm the chairperson of the standing committee. It's a multi-party committee. We are each going to ask you one question, and you have 3 minutes to answer a particular question. I will also afford you 2 minutes of introductory remarks at the beginning. And we are non-threatening. We don't harm. We are understanding that the work of the Liquor Authority should continue. So we are delighted that we have 5 people that we are going to interview today, and you being one of them. So any introductory remarks from you? I trust that you feel welcome and comfortable by now.
Yeah, thank you. It's always nice to do it through Zoom because you always feel welcome in your own home, and it makes it a hell of a lot more accessible. So from my side, I'm Tanya Wainwright. I'm an attorney here in Cape Town. A lot of my career focus has been on commercial litigation. I do a lot of construction and development work, but I've also chosen to keep fairly open the amount of social work that I do as well. So a lot of my pro bono work is done with families in crisis, domestic violence matters. I still continue to give free legal advice to families who require it. I'm a mediator. I do a lot of family work through mediation, and I really believe in non-adversarial dispute resolution. So, I mean, as far as a position on the board would go, what I would bring to the table would be something from both ends of the stick, you know, understanding the economic necessity for liquor, but also understanding the grassroots human impact that failure to regulate properly will have.
Thank you so much for those introductory remarks. So may I kickstart? Why? Are you able to elaborate further on why you have applied? I know you've already touched on it, but I will afford if you want to elaborate on that, it might be useful to the committee.
Sure. So a lot of lawyers that start their studies do so with the intention of making a difference. Never really lost sight of that. You know, when you start working for big corporate firms, you work for your clients' interests. I left corporate litigation to start my family, and then try to find a way when returning to work how I could sort of rekindle that. And that's why I went and got my qualification for mediation through UCT. So I still have a lot of work that I do in the development side of things. Specifically, I deal with retail commercial developments. So I understand the processes involved and how crucial it is to have a liquor license for those developments to actually work. But again, a lot of the work that I've done in domestic violence court, personal protection order court, you see the direct correlation that has on and the impact it has on people's lives. So it's always very important never to lose sight of that while trying to bolster the economy as well.
Thank you so much. You will now hear some other voices as well. So I will note member Gillian Bosman.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good afternoon. My question to you, Ms. Wainwright, would be, what would you consider to be some of the major challenges facing the Western Cape Liquor Authority?
I mean, as far as liquor authorities go, the Western Cape has a really, really good one. You know, it's a very accessible process to apply for your license. I think the challenges that are experienced through the authority, and it's sort of painted, the entire authority is painted this way in the industry, is the speed at which applications are processed, and also being able on a developmental level to understand why certain decisions have been taken. So, I mean, that's just from personal experience, what I've seen happen in these developments. But other than that, I mean, I frequently travel out of the province. We've got family out in the Eastern Cape where, you know, you can see the licenses are handed out like beaches. So a lot is being done in our province in community policing forum, neighborhood watches, community involvement, to really try and draw people into the process, which I don't think is the case in other parts of the country, well, from my point of view. So a lot of work is being done in the Western Cape, but obviously there's always room for focus and improvement and innovation.
Thank you so much. We are doing well for time, and you are sticking to your time. I now see Member Kama.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to Ms. Wainwright for the responses that have been given so far. My question will be, what would you consider to be the main responsibilities of a well-functioning Western Cape Liquor Authority Board?
So the main functions of the board are obviously given in Section 2 of the Act, which would equate to a company's memorandum. a lot of powers, just general management powers, but it has an oversight authority. It provides assistance to the executive. It ensures good corporate governance. It is the accounting authority. It receives applications. It makes appointments of members of the tribunal and staff members, or dismissals as the case may be. HR policy creation, code of conduct development and drafting, when an applicant is successful or unsuccessful, it is the authority that either issues the decision and license if applicable. So those would be the main functions. And then obviously good record keeping. I can't forget good record keeping.
Member Philander.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon, Ms. Wainwright. You have alluded in your previous response to improvement and innovation. My question to you is, the Western Cape Liquor Act aims at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. What would you recommend as a smart intervention or smart interventions that you would want to see reflected within the Act? Thank you very much.
I beg your pardon, Member Philander, but you broke up from the beginning of your question, so I would ask that you please repeat it.
Sure. Do you mind if I switch off my camera?
Not at all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Wainwright, you have alluded to improvements as well as to innovation. My question to you is, the Western Cape Liquor Act aims at changing the laws around the sale of alcohol. What would you recommend as a smart intervention or smart interventions that you would want to see reflected within the Act? Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of practically speaking, you know, maybe a greater ability of the community to not only on the granting of a license to intervene and participate, but also on an ongoing basis, perhaps a greater community involvement on renewals. But that is then, I'd like to caveat that where there are certain applicants that, you know, your anchor tenants in a center, for instance, or tenants that have a good standing in operating their liquor licenses, that there be a certain level of exemptions. Perhaps new applicants could receive community oversight in maybe the first 2 or 3 years of their renewal in order to establish on an ongoing basis how that premises is actually conducting itself. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you so much. Let me switch on my camera. Members, I am looking for additional questions. Is there any burning question or a clarity-seeking question from your side? I will afford you, Ms. Wainwright, a 2-minute concluding remarks from your side. We are delighted as a committee that you have taken the time in order to not only prepare, but to be here and to engage us during this interview. It is highly, highly appreciated on a Friday of all days. So thank you so much. I still see no additional hands, which is an indication that you have covered yourself. So thank you so much, and may you have an amazing rest of your Friday. But any concluding remarks?
Thank you very much all for being, for making yourselves available and for the amazing work that you do in our province. I think concluding, I don't come to the table alleging to know everything that is required. I think that this is a great opportunity to tick those boxes that I've had to make a difference, but also to learn from very experienced and in the country, the best in the business. I'd love to see, especially with the new, going into the new term, the innovation that's going to be happening, because there's a lot of investment that's about to happen in this province, and to see the speed and innovation that's going to be developing over the next 5 years. And I'd be honored to be considered to form part of that. If anyone does have any additional questions that may come to mind, you're more than welcome to phone me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate your openness and for you engaging us here this afternoon. May you have an amazing rest of your day, members. That's our final interviewee. May you keep well.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a blessed weekend.
Lede van die komitee, members of this committee, thank you so much. It is now 12:16. May I request that we take a short break and reconvene at 12:25. Would that be in order with everyone? So that we can take a comfort break. Thank you so much.
In order, Chair.
Member Kama looks extremely fresh today in his attire for this meeting. Social media shows us you look very snazzy. Wasim, so we will be back 12:25. Colleagues, I trust that you are well. I have spoken to Member Philander, who is going to log into our meeting again. Our meeting is now open. To those that are viewing online, thank you so much for your attendance here today. As a committee, we have interviewed five applicants, and I will refresh the names. It is Dr. America, Mr. Morris, Mr. Lowe, Advocate Koza, and Ms. Wainwright. The committee will now, during this time, in terms of section 72, close the meeting for its deliberation as per previous engagements regarding interviewing a list of nominees, and directly there afterwards we will open before we conclude. So thank you so much for listening and for tuning in, and for tuning in, as we believe this body plays a vital role in terms of the work that they do. Mr. Iso, may I request at this time As soon as I get an indication from IT that the meeting is open, Mr. Issel, thank you so much. Members, our meeting is open. Thank you so much for your engagement during our deliberations. To those that are tuned in via YouTube, the committee has interviewed 5 nominees as detailed earlier on. I have asked our procedural officer to flight the relevant report to be adopted, and I will read the report for the record. The report of the Standing Committee on Community Safety, Cultural Affairs and Sport on the recommendations for appointment of candidates to the Governing Board of the Western Cape Liquor Authority dated 12 November 2021 as follows. The Governing Board of the Western Cape Liquor Authority required membership for 2 vacancies in order to comply with Section 3(1)(a) of the Western Cape Liquor Act. Section 3(3) of the Western Cape Liquor Act stipulates that the Standing Committee must make recommendations referred to in subsection 1 after evaluating all candidates as to their suitability for appointment. The committee, having received a list of candidates from the Minister of Community Safety in the Western Cape, proceeded to interview all of the 5 eligible candidates on 12 November 2021. The committee resolved to submit its recommendations for appointments to the Western Cape Liquor Authority Governing Board to the Provincial Minister of Community Safety. Members, do I get any indication that as read can be approved? Thank you so much, Member Philander. Member Kama.
Chair, I second Member Philander to approve the report. Thanks.
Thank you so much, members. So we will duly then submit our report to the WCPP and the Minister, as well as our letter regarding the recommendations. I do appreciate your time and effort that you have taken to not only prepare for this meeting, but also interview and diligently assess those that were interviewed. Once again, to all that were interviewed, our heartfelt thanks and appreciation for your attendance here and availing yourselves. In terms of any further business, I trust that we have covered everything, Mr. Matthews, and that I'm able to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, you may adjourn, and thank you to the members and yourself for the smooth running today for today's interviews. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Colleagues, members, please enjoy the rest of your day. Mr. Issel, a special thanks to you as well, Mr. Daza and Mary Ann Burgess. Thank you, Wasim. Ons waardeer alles wat jy doen. Baie dankie. This meeting is now adjourned.
Thanks.